The second episode of My Hero Vigilantes started out right, with Knuckleduster versus Eraserhead. At this point in time, Eraserhead was still a barely known hero, so KD was the only one who recognized him. Now, the thing about fighting a character from the main series in a spin-off is that you can't make them look bad. Eraserhead's whole brand pretty much depends on him looking cool, so we're not about to deviate too far from that. Especially not for his introduction to this story. Knuckleduster is so valid that Eraserhead assumed that the guy had some kind of durability quirk. But because Knuckleduster is actually quirkless and Eraserhead's quirk neutralizes quirks, this was just two guys going at it without superpowers, which is a rare sight for My Hero. It also goes to show just how effective Eraserhead's capture tape is, since it's what gave him the edge here. These guys were throwing hands for so long that the time of day changed. So I guess this series won't have the same blue sky complaints that My Hero Academia does. During this, Popstep and Koichi were freaking out about being associated with the old man. But they didn't end up running away, so clearly they're already attached to him. Now, it turns out that Knuckleduster was actually onto something when it came to the man with the toys. He was spotted at a bunch of recent trigger incidents. So even though he's rough around the edges, Knuckleduster's strong instincts cannot be denied. But this is not the same dealer who gave the Three Stooges their hit. And speaking of the devil, right on cue, Ed and Eddie pulled up on Koichi. But damn, that lizard guy did not stick the landing at all. From what we saw of his transformation in the last episode, this guy did not have wings before using trigger. He must be higher than he can fly, because I know that hurt. His homies got cool transformations they can turn on and off at will. Meanwhile, Spinner's cousin Turner over here is stuck with physical deformities, and is now the personal vehicle of his two friends. And that weight is not evenly distributed on both sides. On a more lore-heavy note, I wonder if flight might have been a more latent aspect of his quirk that could have arisen naturally by way of quirk awakening. While that was happening, Knuckleduster and Eraserhead wrapped up their fight. Eraserhead apologized since the guy doesn't have a quirk, and just moved on. But listen, if I'm KD in this situation, that hero better run me a check. He was putting boots to face and had a civilian bleeding. And when he finally realized that he was just beating up an old man, the most he had to say was, "Oh, my bad. Yeah, there's no way I'm not suing you after that." It looked like Eraserhead was on his way home after grocery shopping, but actually, his bag was full of eye drop fluid. And with that kind of bulk on a regular basis, I hope they give him a special discount or something. But in the manga, he also picked up a book about cats. It seems like it's still in the bag, but they decided not to show the cover. After the fight, Knuckleduster lit a cigarette with a smile. Clearly, he enjoyed himself. And yeah, cigarettes are bad, okay? But I love that Japanese media still uses it to make characters look cool. We've kinda lost that cinematic sauce in the West. Now, look how Eraserhead was still about to report this man to the police. Again, you're lucky they're not being called on you. Aizawa didn't even follow up with the alleged victim of the situation. Elsewhere, the trio were chasing after Koichi, and after using Trigger, Spike went from being a Wolverine knockoff to being the new Sonic the Hedgehog. Too bad for him, Horikoshi already made Sonic a canon hero in My Hero Academia. But even with supercharged quirks, Knuckleduster still laid these fools out. Who needs support items or quirks when you can just hit people with bricks? See, now Spike actually has a reason to spin the block because that was just so disrespectful. And God bless his soul, he tried, but Eraserhead pinned him down in an instant. However, somebody in the comments let me know why he insisted on putting the heel of his boot on that boy's backside like that. In the manga, it was distinctly his capture tape, so somebody in that studio is just having fun at this point. Popstep finally caught up to the toy lover, but the flying victim kicked her into him. He picked up his All Might doll and had a look in his eyes that would make Woody and Buzz need therapy. This man's quirk has nothing to do with his tongue, so the fact that he had it doing cartwheels at the sight of this mini All Might is a whole different cause for concern. I know they just wanted to show the fact that he also has the tongue of a druggie, but that was crazy. He used the doll to inject himself with Trigger and turned into a Colossus. It's actually insane how much stronger Trigger can make a person's quirk. It's to the point where I could totally see a government aim to create a more stable version. You could argue that that might become a problem in and of itself, but that's never really stopped world powers in the past. Now, these civilians are very lucky that this guy has a childlike obsession with toys. because thanks to that, he walked around the city very carefully as if the buildings around him were a Lego set. But all of a sudden, Knuckleduster came swinging in with a grappling line. Where did he get that? How did he get high enough to pull that off? And how did he manage to kick the giant that hard? I'm not even asking these questions to critique. I love that Knuckleduster always has some random tool to get the job done. But damn! Are we sure that this man doesn't have a durability quirk? The way he got slapped into that sign was brutal. From there, it was up to Koichi to save Popstep. Her quirk Leap is dependent on her having a jump point. So while it's kind of similar to quirks like Float and Airwalk, it's definitely the most lacking one. On his way there, Koichi was finally honest to himself about his dream of becoming a hero, even if it's only for a moment. And the way Koichi saved Popstep from a massive opponent is made to parallel how Deku saved Uraraka from the giant robot during the UA entrance exam. He didn't have a plan to ensure his own safety, but still leapt into action. Luckily, the giant tried to grab him afterwards, so he was able to survive. Using trash bags to cushion his fall was a page right out of Knuckleduster's playbook. It shows Koichi's ability to learn from example and apply that knowledge at a moment's notice. From what we've seen so far, Koichi might just be a prodigy. I honestly wonder if All Might would have considered him to be a potential successor if he'd met the kid. That wouldn't have gone that well in the end, but still. From there, Eraserhead beat the villain on sight. Erasure is just way too strong. This is why Horikoshi was always nerfing him. Based on their post-game breakdown, being more honest about how he really feels will be a major point of growth for Koichi. Later, Knuckleduster gave Koichi some motorcycle gear to wear under his clothes, which is yet another support item on a budget. On that note, it looks like Koichi's high-speed scenes will be done with a bit of 3D modeling. For me at least, it was pretty unnoticeable, so I'd say they're well done. Koichi tried to break up a fight between middle school delinquents and somehow wound up in the trash again. The setting for this scene was toned down compared to in the manga. There, the fight was actually causing trouble for civilians too. It wasn't just in some random alleyway. Koichi revealed his new alias, the Crawler, which is a nod to the author's intention of having him be like the Spider-Man of the My Hero world. A role that Deku also definitely embraced with Black Whip. One of the kids has a special visor like Cyclops from X-Men. Normal citizens aren't typically allowed to wear support items, so he probably has a condition like Cyclops where he can't control his laser otherwise. And in that sense, I guess it's also kind of like Oyama's naval laser quirk and how he needed his special belt. But this guy's quirk isn't actually that harmful. He used it on Koichi, and it seems to just be like shining a bright light in someone's eyes. Miraculously, Koichi managed to get stomped out for the second episode in a row. Knuckleduster came to back him up, but was stopped before he could do anything. Since these guys are in middle school, the story can't have this grown man beating them up and still expect him to look cool. That's where Popstep came in. Although she's mostly been a damsel in distress so far, unlike the two guys, she's actually good at publicity, so that's where she really shines. The Laser Kid was at her street concert in episode 1, so he's definitely a big fan. Also, Popstep's autograph is adorable. When another villain went on a rampage, Koichi managed to save a baby, which just goes to show that he's far better at being a hero of action instead of a public figure. But yet again, what is this man Knuckleduster made of? He took a punch to the gut from a guy who can break buildings with his fists. Everyone around Deku growing up must have just been a max level hater because clearly, quirkless people are not normal humans. To be on par with a base human in this world, you might as well take the super serum. He got back up like it was nothing and proceeded to break the villain's weaknesses down in a flash. Which is again, something I would totally expect from Deku. Hardening quirks are really common in this world, but even with Trigger, this guy couldn't compare to what Kirishima managed to accomplish with hard work, even before he had Unbreakable. Knuckleduster beat this man so badly that even his mother wouldn't recognize him. Now, there's a sound effect that goes along with Popstep activating her quirk, and I think it sounds great. But speaking of Popstep additions, in the manga version, Popstep's costume was a lot more revealing, but has since been adjusted for the anime. Some people don't seem to like that, but bro, she's literally a high schooler. What do you expect? Of course they would change her costume. And to me at least, her anime costume is simply better. It just looks more complete. When the police showed up, they mentioned checking the quirk registry, which is a reminder of how hard it must be to be a villain with a secret identity. At least if you have a distinct quirk. It turns out that none of these instant villains, good name by the way, had any prior records of villainous activity. They've also only been involved in violent outbursts instead of anything especially clever. I would love to see someone using Trigger to boost a supplementary quirk. Imagine a healer who uses Trigger to save more lives. Something like that would be very morally conflicting. One of the people here is actually Detective Tsukauchi, All Might's old friend. And since we're on the other side of the law with this series, it makes sense for him to be more involved. I was always neutral towards his character, but when he got that stress beard for the final war, I thought he was pretty cool. Besides all that, our trio seemed to have turned Koichi's place into their hideout. And thanks to those kids from before, Monster Fist Geezer and the Squalor are the talk of the town. Yet another fun episode of My Hero Vigilantes is in the books. I really appreciate you guys checking these anime videos out. They're a lot of fun to do, so I hope you're entertained. As always, I'm Slice of Otaku. Thank you all so much for watching and have an awesome day. I love you.